Okay, so in this video, we're going to now continue our installation and provisioning of our system. So we've connected our cStore, we've provisioned our cView packet broker, and we have our cClear running and connecting to both of those devices. So what we're going to do now is to set up our network monitoring so that we can actually now start capturing and recording analytics and all the packet data coming in on our ports. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to log into our cClear platform, and you can see here the wizard has finished, so we can see the last thing we have outstanding now is our setup, our monitoring. So we can either click on here or we can come in to configure our ports and our network monitors. So the first step is we're going to configure our port groups. So what I want to do is to create a new port group, and we're going to call that port group, in this particular case, all smart ports. So what I'm going to do is kind of group all of our ports on our broker, and we're going to map all of those ports. I'm going to decide which ports types that I want to do, and I'm actually going to bring all of those in, irrespective of the type of port that has been configured. We'll go into those in a later video. I can also now select the broker that I'm interested in. So I can select on the packet broker that's configured, and I can select individual ports if I want to within there. And I can now save that configuration to my system. So I've created a group of ports that now have a label that I can then categorize and put individual functions on that particular port. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to configure a network monitor, and there are a number of different monitors that we can set up in our system, and those individual ports and monitors can run different things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new group or a new network monitor, and what this is going to do is this is a label that we're going to use to look for certain types of traffic, so that when our traffic is coming in, we can filter on that traffic, we can disregard packets that are not compliant or don't meet that requirement. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a generic application for everything. So applications underscore all is going to be the name of my monitor. I can add in an additional kind of field in here if I want to. The other thing I need to do is I need to tell it what sort of traffic that I want to capture. So in this particular case, I'm going to capture all analytics data. So all application analytics information. I'm also can decide on do I want it to just come from a specific port, or do I want to come from a specific source? So what I can do is I'm going to say I'm going to collect this on all IP addresses that are coming in. And I can also select where do I want this data. So if I've got multiple port groups or I've got multiple cStores, then I can actually select specifically which one I want that to come from. So I'm going to just pull it from my cStore. But again, I could say, well, if this data is coming in on one port group, then that's the port group that I want this filter, effectively, this network monitor to run on. So I'm going to go ahead and create that network filter. And we can create as many of those as we want to. So for example, I might want to create one for TCP. So here again, I can do for example, TCP all. And again, I can put a description in, and I can look for just TCP application or just TCP packets that are coming in. Again, I can collect all data, and I can select my cStore that I want to add that into, and again, I can create that. So our system now has been set up with a couple of monitors to allow us to search for different types of traffic coming in from different sources, and then analyze that data and monitor that data. So the last thing we need to do here is we actually need to now turn those monitors on. So now the system is going to go out to those ports and to those storage applications and those packet capture devices, and pull that analytics data from those storage devices and from those ports into our cClear platform. Now, to make life easy, though, one of the things that we want to do is we want to make it much simpler, rather than just looking at a whole load of different IP addresses or different names that are not really intuitive. What we want to do is we want to actually also add the last thing here, which is called application labeling. So what we're going to do is we have the ability to group a series of servers or applications into a more easy to search through and easy to filter group. And we use our application labeling to do that. And we can actually do this in a number of different ways. So one option is that we can do this manually, and the other option is that we can download a text file. So, for example, I can go in and I can set a label manually, and it'll create it from a template. And what we can now do is for example, now we can enter the information about that. So, for example, if I know in my network or my desktop, PCs are all grouped within a specific set of IP addresses, then I can go ahead and I can group anything that comes in from that IP address range, and I can label that as my desktop PCs. And I know from my network that's 172.16.101.1 to 172.16.101.254. So all of the IPs within my network, all my desktop machines go within that IP range. I can also filter by the traffic, so I can bundle anything that comes in on that IP address range or in a group of ports. I can now bundle all that data together to make it much easier. I can also search by protocol, so I'm going to say look at all protocols. I can also exclude data. So in this particular case, I'm going to group all of this data together, so I'm not going to exclude it. And I can also, if I'm using fully qualified domain names and I'm looking host lookups, I can also group those together into a specific host group by doing so. So once I've done that, I can now group those devices into my application name and my application labels. And now the system will look at all of that network traffic that's coming in on all the ports. It will categorize it using the network monitor, and it will then save it and search based on the IP address ranges. And what we'll be able to do as we add the rest of this information, and we'll go into in a later video, is we'll be able to now categorize and bring all of this information together and display it in our dashboards and filter and search through based on application type or network monitor traffic type, and ports and various other pieces of information. So rather than entering the data line by line, we have the opportunity where we can actually upload a file. So what we can do is we can download our template. So we can click on our download template button. That will then download an example CSV file that we can enter and populate all of the fields as we would do on the table when we entered it all in manually. Once we've created that file, all we need to do is to upload that into the system. And we do that by entering the Set Labels button. Once we've collected on that, instead of creating the entries from a table, we can actually choose a file that we want to upload. So we can click on the Choose File, we can select our configuration file and click OK. So this is just a CSV file with a set of fields that we've predefined. So we have the application name, the IP address range, port protocol, exclusion, and host group. So we can enter all of those into our CSV file. And then when we click next, that will then basically repopulate the table for us. So we can see we have all of our IP address ranges, and we can now save those directly into our cClear platform. And you'll see that those get uploaded, translated, and we now have each of our different application with its IP address range and its host group, and we have those all onboarded and configured. So our system now is able to look at all the data that's going to be coming in from all of our different ports. It can look at the IP address range. It'll know what application that address range is talking to, and we can then categorize those. So if we now go to our dashboard, we can load up our dashboard. And once we've got that, for example, if we open our IPs for applications, we can now see our data coming in. So we can see in the last 5 minutes, and each of our applications are now visible. So we can see all of the different applications that we set in the table have now been isolated, and that data is being filtered based on that application group. And we can see that within our dashboard. So that completes the setup and final parts of the configuration for our cClear management system. So we now have our cViews, our brokers onboarded, our cStore storage applications, our port groups, and our network monitors all configured to capture and analyze all the traffic coming in on our network and store those and capture that analytics.